Just don't tell your mother. Promise me, sweetheart. My grandmother's fingers trembled as she reached for mine. Her voice was low but sharp enough to slice the room in half. It was 2 days before my wedding. I was in her sunlit kitchen, sipping tea, thinking we were just reminiscing. But her eyes, they weren't warm. They were warning me. Don't tell her about the inheritance. The apartment in Moscow, the country house, the 15 million. None of it. She must never know. Hi everyone, my name is Lena Whitlow. I was raised by my grandmother more than my mother. Mom was busy living her best life, usually somewhere far from me, chasing her own spotlight. But this changed everything. I nodded. Okay, I won't say anything. And I meant it. Grandma had never asked me for much in life. She taught me how to braid my hair, how to tell good people from poison, and how to stay quiet when staying alive depended on it. She hugged me tighter than usual that night. 2 days later, I walked down the aisle in my grandmother's veil, heart full. 3 days later, I found her body on the floor of her study, and someone had already taken the will. The coroner called it a stroke. But when I saw the look in my grandmother's eyes, still half open, half horrified, I knew something was wrong. My mother arrived 10 minutes after the ambulance. No tears. No panic. Just a scarf thrown around her neck and a little smirk when she glanced down at the study floor. Poor thing, she muttered. Old hearts just give out, don't they? But the safe was open. And the will, the one Grandma had showed me just a week before, was gone. I didn't say a word. I stood in silence as they covered her body. As the tea cooled on the counter. As my mother picked up the cat figurine on the desk and dropped it in her purse like it was a souvenir. Later that evening, my husband Ethan tried to comfort me. She was old, babe. Maybe it was just her time. No, it wasn't. Because before she died, Grandma had scribbled something on a post-it and stuffed it behind the radiator. I found it that night while everyone else was sipping wine and pretending to mourn. It said, "If she takes the house, dig under the rose bush." That's where I hid the truth. And I already saw Mom outside, gardening gloves on, smiling. I didn't sleep that night. While my mother roamed the house with fake tears and sudden bursts of forced sobbing, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the rose bush through the fogged-up window. It was January. The ground was cold, hardened by frost. But by noon the next day she was out there, scarf tied like a heroine from an old film, holding a thermos of coffee and a small spade. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I walked out quietly. "Need help?" I asked. She jumped, then smiled. "Just pruning. Grandma always loved these roses." I nodded, staring at the spot she was digging. Exactly where the post-it said. By dusk she came back inside, mud on her boots and something clutched in her jacket. I knew I wouldn't see it again. That night I picked the lock to her study. She tucked the envelope inside a hollowed-out book, exactly like the movies. Inside were 2 documents, one with a signature that looked like Grandma's and one with mine. But I never signed anything. She'd forged my consent to transfer the country house to her name. There was only one thing she didn't know. Grandma taught me her signature. And she taught me how to prove when it wasn't hers. The next morning, I took the documents to a lawyer I trusted, Mr. Klein. He'd worked with my grandmother once, years ago. His hands trembled as he examined the forged signature. This isn't hers," he whispered. "She always signed her name with a curve here, never a sharp stroke." I nodded. "I know. She taught me." He looked at me carefully. "Do you want to go public with this? Or something quieter?" "Quieter," I said. "For now." I didn't want police. I wanted truth. And I wanted her to feel it unravel slowly. When I returned home, my mother was in the living room laughing on the phone, probably with one of her equally venomous friends. I watched her twirl her wine glass like she owned the world. Later that night I called a locksmith. The country house still had my name on the municipal registry. If she wanted it, she'd have to fight me in court. But by then she wouldn't be able to, because I found something else in that envelope. A second forged signature. This one? It belonged to my grandmother's lawyer, the one she'd fired after claiming he'd been bought off. Except I just learned he never stopped working for her. He was still on her will. And the real copy? Hadn't been read yet. I waited until Sunday afternoon. That's when my mother liked to host her garden lunches, inviting friends who'd helped her rise through social circles. I wasn't invited, of course, but I came anyway, dressed in black. Come, smiling. She blinked when she saw me walk through the gate. Her grip on the wine glass faltered for a moment, but she recovered with a false laugh. "Look who's returned," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The prodigal daughter." I stepped closer, placed a single envelope on the table. "No games," I said. "You'll want to read that." Her smile twitched. Around the table, her friends exchanged curious looks. She opened the envelope, slowly trying to maintain control, and froze. Inside was a photo of her and the notary who supposedly signed the fake will. It was time-stamped. 3 days after the date on the forged document. Another photo, her leaving his office with a check in hand. "I have more," I said softly. "Much more." Her friends were no longer smiling. I leaned in. "You can confess. Or I can speak." Her eyes didn't blink. "You wouldn't dare." I tilted my head. I already did. Because as she read those photos, the lawyer was already in the courtroom, filing the real will. And soon she'd be called in for questioning. By Monday morning the storm had begun. The judge ordered a review of the will. The notary's office was raided for records. And my lawyer, quiet, precise, filed a petition to freeze all transfers of assets until the truth was settled. My mother stopped answering calls. At first she tried to act like it was all a misunderstanding. A clerical error, she told her friends. But her voice cracked when she spoke. Because she knew what else I had, voice recordings. One from the hospital room, the day before my grandmother died. She thought no one heard her say, "Don't worry. She won't get a cent." But I had heard. And I'd been recording since that day. Meanwhile, the court summoned my uncle, the only person who'd stood beside me after the funeral. He submitted the original copy of my grandmother's handwritten letter, the one she had left in his safe just in case. It was dated and notarized weeks before the version my mother submitted. "Everything goes to my granddaughter," it said. The courtroom was silent. My mother's lawyer whispered something in her ear, and for the first time, I saw panic bloom in her eyes. And then she stood up and walked straight toward me. She stood in front of me, this woman who had raised me, lied to me, stolen from me, and said in a voice trembling with false sweetness, "You don't have to go through with this. We're family." My lawyer didn't move. Neither did I. "Family?" I said softly. "You buried my name. Sold my face for money. You thought I'd disappear quietly." Her mask cracked. The judge called the courtroom back to order. But before my mother could return to her seat, the bailiff handed over the forensic report. It confirmed what we suspected. Her version of the will was fabricated. The ink wasn't even dry. It had been printed 3 days after my grandmother's death. And then the final blow came. A quiet voice from the back of the room. "My name is Elena Petrov. I was the notary. That version of the will you submitted, your mother bribed my assistant to fake it. I quit the same day." Gasp. Reporters. Flashbulbs. My mother stared at the floor, her face pale. Her lawyer backed away. Outside, snow was falling. Inside, the judge's gavel fell. And just like that, the silence was broken, forever. But I still hadn't said the one thing I'd waited all these months to say. She tried to stand, but her knees gave out. The bailiff caught her just before she hit the ground. My mother, once so proud, so cunning, now looked up at me like a stranger begging for a name she'd forgotten. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. I stepped forward. Calm, measured, and in full control. "Your lawyer told you to settle. You didn't listen. My grandmother begged you to stop chasing her money. You didn't listen. I gave you silence, and you mistook it for weakness." She tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "My name is Alexander Valov. You erased it from the family records. But today that name signs over every apartment, every deed, every ruble you thought you'd stolen." From my coat pocket, I pulled a small velvet box and set it gently on the table in front of her. It was her ring, my grandmother's. The one she pawned and lied about losing. "I bought it back the day I buried her," I said. Reporters swarmed the hallway as I walked past. Outside, my wife stood waiting with our newborn daughter in her arms. I kissed her forehead. And as the snow melted under my boots, I looked toward the courthouse steps. And never once looked back.